One August morning in 1992, a footman set the day's newspapers down beside Sarah Ferguson at the Balmoral breakfast table, and by that same evening, the household that had adored her had, almost without a word, decided she was already gone. If this account has been useful, subscribing costs nothing, and more stories like this one are queued. The bell notification means you will see them. Look at the tray again. The same photograph on every front page, and the whole family reading it at once. The Duchess of York, beside a swimming pool in the south of France. Her financial advisor, John Bryan, bent over her bare feet. Not one paper, all of them. Folded, pressed, laid out in a neat row on the white cloth, in front of the assembled royal family, on an ordinary morning in the last warm weeks of a Scottish summer. Staff who were in the room later described what happened next, and what struck them was what did not happen. No scene, no raised voice, no order given, no door slammed. The room simply went quiet. And that quiet, they said, was the sound of a verdict being passed. By that same evening, the people who served her looked at her differently, and not one of them had been told to. That is the strange part, because a week before, she had been the warm one. Go back only a little to the house itself. Sunninghill Park, a modern place near Windsor, red brick and new money. The kind of house the press took one look at and nicknamed South York. It was not a palace. It did not pretend to be. And inside it, the footmen, the maids and the aides remembered a woman who did something most royals never bothered to do. She learned their names. She remembered which of them had a sick child, which one had just got married. She laughed too loud at her own jokes, and she meant it. The staff table, the place below stairs where the people who serve are meant to stay invisible, she treated more kindly than almost anyone above her ever had. Red-haired, unpolished, a little too fun for the room she had married into, that was the point of her. When she walked up the aisle to marry Prince Andrew in 1986, the country was sold a very particular story. Here was the antidote. Diana had arrived fragile, watched, breakable, under all that attention. Sarah was the opposite. She rode, she skied, she cracked jokes at the cameras and seemed to enjoy the whole absurd circus of it. The palace let that image run because it was useful. A monarchy that had one nervous young woman at its centre now had a laughing one to balance her out. That was the public picture. Warm, funny, human. And here is what the public picture never showed. The machine around her was already watching. Long before any swimming pool, long before John Bryan, the quiet apparatus of the royal household, the aides and private secretaries whose whole job is the reputation of the crown, had been keeping score. They noted the friends she kept, the debts, the holidays that did not quite look right in the newspapers. To them, she was never simply the fun one. She was a variable, something to be managed. So when the footman set that tray down, the reaction was not shock, it was confirmation. Picture it for a second. Picture the staff who had laughed with her the week before, the ones who had watched her tease Andrew across the corridor and sneak second helpings from the kitchen, now standing very still, unsure whether it was still allowed to meet her eye. Nobody handed them a rule. Nobody explained the new temperature of the house. They simply felt it change under their feet, the way you feel a room turn against someone before a single word is spoken. That is what makes this morning worth understanding. A household does not usually turn on someone overnight. Affection like that is earned slowly, name by name, kindness by kindness, and yet the staff at Balmoral did turn in the space of a single breakfast, and the thing that turned them was not cruelty and not an argument. It was the room going quiet. It was the silence itself, deciding. But hold on to one detail, because it changes everything that follows. That morning did not come from nowhere. The photographs by the pool were the trigger. They were not the cause. A room only goes that quiet, that fast, when the patience in it has already been worn thin somewhere else, over months, out of sight of the cameras. The tolerance the household had once shown her had been running down for the better part of a year, and by that August there was almost nothing left in reserve. But the pool photographs were not the beginning. To understand why one quiet morning was enough to finish her, you have to go back to the winter before, to a different set of pictures, and a Texan named Steve Wyatt. The winter before the pool photographs, a different set of pictures had already begun the work. In January of 1992, images surfaced of Sarah on holiday, with the Texan Steve Wyatt. And then came the detail that made the palace flinch. A cache of intimate photographs was said to have been found in a London flat, left behind, forgotten. The kind of loose stack of prints that once out of your hands never really comes back. So this was not a bolt from the blue. It was the second blow to a woman already living on borrowed goodwill. The public read the Wyatt story as a scandal. Inside the household, according to former staff, it read as something worse, a warning that had gone unheeded. Because here is the thing about the family she had married into. It rarely reacts on the day. It waits, and it watches, and it remembers. By spring the announcement came. Sarah and Andrew confirmed a separation. Not a divorce, not yet. A separation. Which in the strange grammar of the monarchy meant she was leaving the marriage while remaining, technically, inside the family. She still had her title. She was still the Duchess of York. She was still, when the calendar said so, expected at Balmoral, and that is where the accounts turn quietly painful, because staff described a woman living in a kind of limbo, still on the estate, still walking the same corridors, still passing the same footmen who had once laughed at her jokes, but no longer quite belonging to the place she was standing in. She had a bedroom in the house and no real seat at the table. She was there, and she was already halfway gone, and everyone but her seemed to sense it. The tolerance, staff said, had worn thin, not snapped, thin, like a coat you keep wearing one winter too long. Then came August, and the man bent over her feet beside a French swimming pool. And this is the part people get wrong. The Bryan photographs did not start the collapse, they finished it. They landed on tolerance that was already stretched to nothing, and they snapped it clean. What looked, from the outside, like a sudden fall was really the last small weight on a thread that had been fraying since the winter. What the servants noticed after that was not cruelty. This is the detail that unsettles the more you sit with it. Nobody shouted at her. Nobody was unkind. What she got instead was withdrawal, a slow, deliberate stepping back that never announced itself. The invitations were the first sign. The small ones, the ones that had always simply arrived. A word about drinks before dinner, a note about who was riding out in the morning, the casual inclusions that told you that you were, quietly, one of them. Former household accounts describe how those simply stopped coming. No letter said she was excluded. The letters just stopped. Notice how no one had to be cruel. The invitations simply stopped, and the silence did the rest. And then it moved into the smaller mechanics of the day, the things only the staff would clock. Aides who had once lingered by her door to chat, to share a bit of gossip, to trade a joke, now delivered their message and left. They came in. They said their piece. They turned and went. The warmth she had earned at the staff table, that hard-won, genuine warmth, drained out of the house a single degree at a time. Not a slammed door, a room cooling while no one adjusted the heating, and you could feel where the cold was coming from. It came from the top, and it came without a word, because above all of them was the Queen. And according to former household accounts, the Queen said very little. That was the whole of it. She did not deliver a verdict, she did not scold, she simply said less, showed less, and in a house that watched her for every cue, that silence set the temperature for everyone below her. When the sovereign goes quiet, the household reads it instantly. The frieze did not need instructions, it travelled by instinct without a memo, from the top of the house to the boot room and back, and everyone knew their part without being told. That is the machinery people never see, not a punishment handed down, a mood descending. And somewhere in that cooling week, according to those who were there, the mood found its words. Just once. A senior member of the household was said to have made a single remark about the Duchess, not shouted, not written down, spoken quietly, in passing, the way the most damaging things in that world are always spoken. You will not have heard it, because it was never meant to leave the room. But among the people who served her, it did the work of a formal sentence. It named, out loud, the one thing that could not be forgiven, and it named where she had done it, because in the end it took only one sentence from a senior member of the household, spoken quietly, to seal it. A single remark about what she had done under the family's own roof. And in a royal household, that remark was all the verdict anyone needed. The sentence was almost polite. The Duchess had embarrassed the family under the family's own roof. That was it. No shouting, no formal warning, no letter on headed paper. A senior member of the household said it quietly, the way you might mention the weather, and in a place that ran on discretion, those few words carried more force than any decree. Read that sentence again and notice what it does not contain. No anger, no ultimatum, just a closed door. Because that is how the sentence worked. It did not accuse her of a crime. It placed her precisely on the wrong side of a line everyone in the house already understood, under the family's own roof, at Balmoral, on the Queen's own estate, while the front pages showed her bare feet, and John Bryan bent over them. The offence was not the affair, the offence was the location, and once that judgment existed, it did not need to be repeated, it travelled. No one issued an order, no footman was gathered and told to keep his distance. The frieze moved through the household, the way cold moves through a house at night, room by room, without a hand on any thermostat. A maid noticed the aides had gone brisk. A footman noticed the maid had gone quiet. Each read the temperature off the person above them and adjusted, and by evening the whole building had cooled by the same few degrees, and not one word of instruction had been spoken. This is the part outsiders never quite believe. They imagine a scene, a confrontation, a raised voice, a duchess told to pack. There was none of that. There is almost never any of that. Watch how the institution actually protects itself, and the pattern is always the same. The British monarchy does not punish by confrontation. It punishes by cooling the air. It withdraws the warmth a person has been living inside slowly, deniably, until they find they cannot stay warm in the room any longer. No one can point to the moment they were pushed, because no one pushed. The heat simply left with them still standing in it. Invitations that used to arrive stopped arriving, not refused, just absent. The small daily inclusions that told a person she belonged, the passing chat, the shared joke at the staff table, thinned out until there was nothing there to miss out loud. One biographer later put the whole mechanism into a single flat line. The firm never told Sarah she was finished. It simply stopped including her, and let the absence do the work. Let the absence do the work. That is the closest thing to a doctrine this institution has. There is no expulsion, so there is nothing to protest, nothing to appeal, no villain to name. You are not thrown out of the firm. You are left out of it, one uninvited evening at a time, until leaving is the only thing left to do. And that is the answer to the oldest question about the crown, the one people keep asking as if it were a mystery. How does a family survive 1,000 years of scandal without ever seeming to fight? It survives because it does not fight. It closes ranks in silence. The individual can rage, confess, sell her story, weep on a sofa to a friendly interviewer. The institution says nothing at all, and its silence outlasts every word she has. She is loud. It is patient. Patience wins. Sarah Ferguson learned that in the space of about a week. If a story told from inside the household is the kind of history you actually want, subscribing costs nothing, and there are more of these already waiting. The bell is the only way the next one reaches you the moment it goes live. Now go back to that breakfast tray one last time and watch what really ended there. A footman sets the newspapers down beside her. The same photographs on every front page. The room does not shout. It goes quiet. And in that quiet, something ends that has nothing to do with her marriage, because her marriage was already over, announced months before, in spring. The papers on the tray did not end her marriage. They ended something smaller and far harder to name. In that single morning, the people who had genuinely loved serving her decided, without a vote and without a word, that she was already gone. Not leaving, gone. Present at the table, passing the toast, and gone. That is the real story of that August, and it is colder than any headline. Because remember what she actually had before it. She had earned the staff table, a red-haired duchess who learned the footmen's names, who laughed too loud at her own jokes, who was kinder to the people carrying the trays than most of the born royals ever bothered to be. That warmth was not given to her. She built it, one small human moment at a time, and it was the one thing she truly owned in that house. It was also the one thing the freeze made almost impossible to win back. A title can be kept. A house can be kept. Warmth, once it leaves a room, does not come back because you ask it to. It has to be earned again from the beginning. And the household had quietly agreed there would be no beginning again. So the tray is cleared, the silver is carried out. Somewhere down a long panelled corridor, a footman closes a heavy door, softly, the way he was trained to, and the sound it makes is almost nothing. That is how the monarchy ends someone, not with a verdict, with a door closing quietly, and no one on the other side of it turning to watch her go.